Thank you for watching The Studio Show. People, community, progress. Thank you for watching The Studio Show. People, community, progress. Thank you for watching The Studio Show.
Check 1 2 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2.
I've never been to the New York Stock Exchange, but you see pictures of when the bell rings. Well, that's kind of how it is on the first day of session. The bell rings and that place is flooded with people. Wow. But if people haven't been to the Capitol lately, it was recently remodeled.
Yes.
And it is absolutely gorgeous. And the artwork's all been put back in place. And it is the people's house, and you can go, you can watch the session. You can watch it online, right, too, if you don't want to go to the city. And I encourage people to get involved with what's going on down there, because it's important.
There are lots of ways to connect with that. And some, it's like politics is sometimes boring, a little droolish, I would say, to some people. So it's not the most exciting, sexiest thing, right, out there, but it's important, because
it is important.
Even though those sometimes are small changes to bills, and there's little bitty nuances to those things. If you don't know about it and you're not educated on it, you're not really plugged in as an informed voter,
right.
and that kind of affects. That's how it affects you, right?
And this year they have so much money to appropriate, because we did not win the Panasonic battery thing, and we didn't win Tesla, and we didn't win Volkswagen, which is really sad.
Right.
But they have a lot of money, so seeing where the money goes, and there's some really good bills to infuse a lot of money into education.
Right. But regarding education, because there was back in the day, there was a lot of work on casinos coming in and gambling, and how that was going to fund it. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2.
They're hardworking.
Absolutely, and I think anything that invests in the right way in education, and that's a big debate too. Used to be a big debate about consolidating schools and how to using.
Now we don't like that in Rolla.
Exactly. So I mean, everybody wants to have, and that's another thing. Everybody wants to have control of their local school through their school board, and they should. And they have a voice.
That's the grassroots.
Have a voice. That is exactly right.
I think school board may be, and you notice I haven't run for that.
You're right.
That may be the hardest thing to run for, because everyone wants a great education system for their kids.
And just like anything else, there's a lot of opinions on how to get that done, and a lot of different views on how to do those things. I want to continue to cover that, but it's interesting that you didn't really pursue necessarily a goal of being in politics or being influential in politics, but yet that's kind of where you are, and that you've done a lot in that area, and even 2 times now in Cushing that you've done it. I want to go back and talk about that just a little bit again, but things that you were just working on your first time around in city politics. Are still, you can look at it that way, or you can say that we're still evolving those ideas. Evolving. And the park is a great place to see that right now. What do you see are the other big issues? We know that we hope that the priority of the lake comes up, but we have some pretty big issues that we're dealing with.
We do. Roads and road conditions are always huge and very costly. Right. So that's important. Right now, we've just accepted a bid to do a comprehensive plan moving forward. We did this 20 years ago.
Yes.
So we've reached the end of the life of that comprehensive plan. It's time to look at where we want to go. And we're also going to be looking at zoning ordinances. Sometimes those can be, as downtown grows, where can people put businesses, maybe it needs to expand either deeper on either side or wider or something like that. So that's going to be the next big project, is this comprehensive plan for the next 20 years of where the city needs to go.
And that addresses a lot of that, like where are the industrial areas, where are the retail areas, where are the residential areas, all those things. And some are combined too. But,
and those are very important. We had a gentleman that wanted to buy one of our industrial areas and put a grow facility in the city limits.
Oh, yeah.
And so the ordinances kept that out of the city limits, which I personally think was a good thing.
Right, sure.
So zoning is very important. We'll be asking for city input. And I just want our citizens to be involved and get the facts and give us your ideas, because there's a lot of good ideas out there.
Right.
But if they don't tell us they're good ideas, we won't know them.
Well, and then a good idea is one thing, but then you got to have a practical way to get from A to B, right? To implement it and execute it. So, but you got to have. It takes all people, right? Because you have to be the visionaries, the people that look out here and say, well, we could do this, but how are we going to do it? And then you got to have the practical people. They have to say, we can't do it yet, or we can't do it that way, or we can't. So there's just a lot to it.
Yeah, and our city staff, we have an amazing staff right now. Yeah. Terry Brannon has a great team. The people that work at the city hall, very knowledgeable in what they do. They know what they're doing. They know the law.
Yes.
We're very fortunate right now. We've got great leadership. That doesn't mean you always agree with everything we're doing.
Sure.
That's why people can come up and voice their opinions. We always have a public input at these meetings, and we very rarely have anyone take advantage of that.
Right. But that is important, because it is what makes the big wheel of government move, right? Even as slowly as it does. It moves slowly for a reason. You can never. It doesn't go backwards. The wheel you're always moving forward. So if you've passed a point in time and where you didn't get involved, start today.
Start today. Absolutely. Start today. And don't be intimidated by government, because you don't want government to be a big brother necessarily and tell you what to do. You want government to work for the people.
We talked a long time ago, way back, and I don't know if you remember this conversation or not, but you
don't have to worry. You have a mind I can still track.
Well, just because they were things that made an impact that were important to me. And so you told me one time, you can think whatever you want, you just can't say it. Which is, I'm sure a lot of people would say, well, that's not Joe Kennedy. I can tell you that.
I say that a lot.
But the truth is that yes, and sometimes it's a little too easy to say these days what we're thinking right off the top of our head. You see that a lot in social media. But to stop and listen and to consider the other side and to consider the implications of what the other side, and then really to think through your train of thought too. It's all important, isn't it? The dialogue.
It's very important. And I think that is respecting other people's point of view instead of just blurting out an opposite point of view the first thing that comes in your head, because there may be merit to what you're going to blurt out, but there may be merit to what they are telling you. So you have to weigh it all and see the best way. Collaboration's the best way to get things done, and you come out with a better finished product when you listen to all ideas.
Well, that's really true. And I think if we could go back to even the days, the old, this is way before my time here, but I've heard stories of city council meetings back in the 70s and 80s that were kind of contentious.
Very
contentious, you know. But we see some of the good benefits of that, and we see some of the not so good benefits of that today. But we all have to learn from that history and learn how to move forward together to make it better. So whether we always agree on every little detail on how we're doing the park, or every little detail on what we're doing with the lake, or every little detail on my particular road that I live on, that's the most important one.
That's the most important one.
Right? So all that stuff has to be worked. And I just think you're a good example of that kind of politician. Because
thank you.
No, I think it really is, because you've demonstrated that. Not only demonstrated it, but it's also taken you to great heights from somebody as a politician from Cushing. And so I think that's pretty impressive. You know, and you mentioned too, women in politics it's not always the easiest road, right?
No, you know, but it wasn't bad at the state level. It wasn't. In fact, there were only 11 of us out of 101 when I was there, both Republican and Democrat.
Yes.
And we used to always go to the front of the chamber when not much was going on, all 11 of us, and just put our heads together.
Yeah.
And it'd worry everybody.
It would worry. Okay.
But
what are they up to now?
Yeah, right? What are they doing? You bring a different perspective, just as men bring a different perspective. Right. And there are more women now. I don't know the exact count. I do know in the Senate there's only 8 Democrats and 5 of them are women.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay,
so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's.
So the Democrat caucus in the Senate is a majority women, which is probably the first time in the state's history. So that's kind of cool.
What do you consider a priority?
Right.
What does somebody else consider a priority?
And what should the city's priorities be?
Absolutely. And that's the thing about politics. It's not any one person's opinion, really, is it? I mean, it's about working together.
Collaboration.
And somewhere, it's not the extremes out here, it's somewhere in that middle that gets the better product.
And to be honest, a lot of people say, well, you didn't have to step down until June. Why did you step down? And it's basically so the next person could be on the budget hearings.
Right.
That's so important to get a working knowledge of the city budget. And so I thought, I can go ahead and miss a couple meetings. It's okay. And let the new person get in the trenches as fast as they can.
Right. And because getting up to speed, that budget, and just like you mentioned, going to the county, it's a little bit bigger budget, it's a little more complex, and the state was even very big budget and very complex. And a lot
I don't even want to deal with the federal budget.
No, we don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could solve that, we'd be really well off, wouldn't we? But yeah, it's a complicated problem. Even at the city level, it's a complicated problem. There's just so little wiggle room.
Right.
With everything, and to prioritize everything, and to keep things running smoothly and have continuity is a difficult thing in itself, is it not? To see projects through to the end. Well, this is kind of one question. I think it's a new question, just in the last couple of weeks for me. But the continuity of all this stuff that we've kind of projected, that Terry has projected, really as the city manager, and I think he's done an excellent job too.
He has. With
communication and just the ability to articulate all the little details. He can overwhelm you with details about a project, and it's pretty impressive. But he has such a good understanding of all that. But the continuity of keeping those projects going, and thinking about this project we're doing down here, but we have a project out here maybe in 5 years that we still have to think about. I mean,
well, and
a lot of that
we
plays
have that
into
actually going on now on the east side of the town, because we're looking for a new school.
Oh, that's
been passed that we're going to be building.
Yes.
So the city in the background has to go in, and we have to build a substation for electricity and sewer and water that we can adequately address the situation of that new school. So you're exactly right. You have to be forward thinking. Just because the town voted a new school doesn't mean we can just sit back. We have to make sure that we can serve that school because it will be in the city limits.
Yeah, if we want to turn the lights on and
and flush the toilets.
Flush the toilets, you got to have water and power, right? And so that just is, and that is a very good point, because as the city grows, as infrastructure grows and changes, the city, you don't have any control over it. The specs of the school, or that's just something that happened. The
but we have
school district approach, but you got to be ready for it, right?
Have to figure the capacity needed for it, and so we do have to build, and we are in our plans building a substation on the east part of town, on part of the land that that section where Walmart is.
Yes,
it'll be east of Walmart.
Very good. Okay, so that and all that is, and you can go back to Colin Knight when we. The bond issues a couple of times through to get that passed and all that kind of good stuff. Those are just years long process. I mean, they just take a lot of time to start thinking about it and to get it from what you thought about to what it will be and what it is now, and then what you're going forward with and how to make it work, and then the maintenance of all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot that you can't.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about unintended consequences of some of these decisions, and you've had a long enough time when you first started till now, and all the experience that you've had, that you see, and you said maybe we're fixing some things that we decided that, in the 90s. I mean, what do you take from looking back now? Rarely do you get to talk about decisions you made years ago in the past.
Of course, this wasn't my bill, but to me, the biggest unintended consequence that happened when I was in the legislature was when we started addressing illegal immigration. And we, on the driver's license, we didn't want people here illegally to have driver's license. Okay. And so we put that in law. Illegal people can't have driver's license. Now, the unintended consequences is now, if your driver's license lapsed 2 months, you have to bring in birth certificate and everything to prove you're a citizen.
So even
though
those
you've had a license for 50 years. And the biggest problem I had in that, I can remember, I'll never forget this, a gentleman calling me, and he had adopted 2 children from the Philippines. And now they're supposed to be, they're 16 and able to drive. They've been in America since they were 2. There's in a family of citizens, and he's having a difficult time proving they're American citizens. To me, that is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, unintended consequences we had, was how the Department of Transportation viewed that law and what they did to enforce that law.
Wow.
So, and it wasn't my bill.
Well, good point. But that's a point that it's right down to the personal level. Mm-hmm. These big decisions up here, how they affect people.
How they affect people. And I think people are used to it now. And maybe now it's after you got one license, after that time, they say, are you American citizen now? And you check it. Yeah. But when that was first implemented, it was an absolute nightmare for people.
And it has not been easy, even if through COVID and all the things that have happened. COVID was a big hiccup for everybody in a lot of ways.
It was, but I wasn't there then, so that was good.
You got around all that.
Yeah.
Well, but still, I've heard horror stories about tag agencies and the new license now.
Right. The real ID and all that.
Changing all. It's been a hard transition for some of that because of some of the complicating factors.
And they kicked the can down the road several years, and still, I think the can's still down the road. Yeah. I think more people are getting the real ID. When the federal government said you couldn't fly without it, we go, well, I guess we better step up and get it. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and I know, my son, of course, got his driver's license right in the middle of all that, and boy, terrible time to do that.
Did he have to take his birth certificate?
Oh, it wasn't. We had a pile of paperwork, I can tell you.
And that's still the throwback. From that bill.
Yeah, and where to get it done was hard because things weren't open, things weren't.